Hello and welcome back to Herbie's Garage. Today we're working on my 2022 Venom Ghost Chopper 250. And I'm going to be showing how to remove the gas tank, and if you have to get underneath the gas tank for some reason, or if you have to replace the gas tank, I'm going to show you what you need to do that. Also, I'm going to be removing the throttle cable. I'm going to show you how to take that off, and I'm going to put it back on so I can show you how to put a new one on if you have to. All right, so let's get started right away. Okay, the first thing you need to do is remove the seat. And to remove the seat, you just got to go underneath the back fender, and there's a bolt right here. It's a 13mm nut. You can usually hold this with your hand, or it's an Allen wrench. I think it's a 6mm. And you can hold that as a backer, or get a pair of pliers and just hold it with a pair of pliers, whatever you got to do. You got to take this bolt out. And if you haven't taken off the mid bolt, the middle bolt, there's a bolt back in here a little ways down too, and it's a 10mm. It's about in the middle of the seat. I don't have mine on there. I took mine off because I don't feel it's necessary to keep it on there. It's right here. That's a 10mm, and this bolt back here in the back is a 13mm. You have to remove the seat. Okay, next thing we need to do is get to our petcock. Let's go ahead and pull this side cover off. It just pops out. And we'll remove it so we can get in here to the petcock. And you want to turn this to the off position, which is straight across this way. That's off. Then you want to take your pliers and squeeze the clamp and move it down out of the way, and then just wiggle your gas line off. Before you take your gas line off, you might want to put a rag or something underneath there to catch the gas, because you're going to lose a little bit of gas on that, like that. Didn't lose a lot. And see, there's nothing coming out of the petcock because we have it turned off. The next thing we need to do is at the back of the gas tank, we need to take these two 10mm bolts out. Now when you take these bolts out, you can lift the tank up, and there's a rubber with a metal collar in the middle of it. Be sure and pull those out so you don't lose them, because if you take your tank out, it's liable to drop out on you and you might lose it. So pull all that out. Okay, now your gas tank's ready to remove. There is an electrical connection underneath here that you have to take off, so don't yank the tank off yet. And there's a couple of rubbers in the front, so you have to slide it back, lift it up in the back, slide it towards the rear wheel like that, and then lift up. And then you'll see an electrical connection underneath it here. I'll show you once I get it disconnected. See, the electrical connection is right here, and it connects right down here. So you just have to reach in there and push down on this plastic tab. See, I'll show you. It gets pushed in like this, and you just push on that tab down like that and then pull it out. That's all you have to do. Now your tank's out of the way. And when you remove your tank, it's always best to put it like in a bucket or something, so your petcock can just hang there. You don't want pressure on that petcock when you take your tank out. Okay, let's talk about this tank for a minute. Now, if you have to replace this tank and put a new tank on it or something, it's going to come without the gas cap. It's going to come without the petcock and without the fuel sending unit, the level that tells you the level of fuel in your tank. So what you need to do is you need to empty your tank out. However you can get the gas out, siphon it out with a pump, take the cap off, dump it into a clean container, whatever you got to do to get the gas out of it. Once you get the gas out of it, you turn it upside down, take these two bolts out, and this sending unit will lift out, but it's got a rod with a float on it. And you got to pull that out and turn that until the float is kind of elongated and the hole's elongated. So it'll only come out one way. So you got to kind of wiggle it until it fits in the hole right and then pull it out. Your petcock. Your petcock just screws on. Real easy to do. But you want to get you some Teflon tape and wrap the threads before you put your petcock on. So you put your petcock on, you put your sending unit in, and you put your gas cap on. Once you get all that done, you're ready to go. Okay, now on your throttle cable. Your throttle cable runs from up here at this housing where your throttle is. It runs down on the back side of your fork, and it comes down to here. This is where it splits off. It's a dual cable. One goes to the top of your carburetor, and the other goes to your accelerator pump. Now I'm going to show you what you need to do to disconnect these. Okay, what you want to do is you want to take this cover off on this side as well. So you just pull on it and pop it out, just like you did on the other side. And this one has got a little tab at the bottom down here that you pop these two out, and then you just lift it straight up. Okay, now we're going to take this cable out of the accelerator pump. So we want to loosen this nut up and loosen it up. And then there's a nut on the bottom. We want to loosen that up as well. And once you get that dropped all the way down, you lift up and you see that notch there. You pull the cable through that notch, and then the cable just drops down. Then down here at the bottom, you have to bring it. See if I can see. Then down here, you have to bring it to where it lines up with that cut, like that, and then just wiggle it out, like that. Now your cable's free. Okay. Now on this, we have to take the top off of the carburetor. In order to take the top off the carburetor, we're going to have to loosen this. Once you get that loose, then you can turn it by hand. Unscrew it. Once you get it unscrewed all the way, it'll pop like that because it's under spring pressure. Then lift it up. Your slide will come out with it, like that. Okay, in order to get this cable out of the slide, you have to pull your spring up, like this, and hold it with one hand like that. Try to give yourself enough cable to where you could push this cable up. See how I got my fingers way back here? So I can push this cable up. I want to push that cable up. See how it come out the crack there? Let me do it again. Okay, see that cable is down in the hole right there. What I want to do is I want to push it up to where that lines up with the crack and let that come out and then through the hole. Now your slide's free. Hold on to this spring so they don't go flying. And then you take your spring off. And then your cap comes off. And then your rubber boot comes off. So now you're left with this. Okay, now we have to go up top. Okay, now we have to take this housing apart. And there's two screws underneath here. They're both Phillips screws. You want to unscrew these screws. There's one to the left of the starter switch over here. And then there's a longer one. I think it's longer. It might be the same size, but it's over here by your brake lever. There's just two of them. All right, now that's loose, so that's separated. We're going to loosen the lock nut on the throttle cable. So we can unscrew this throttle cable housing. Okay, now that we got the lock nut loosened, we're going to go down here and we're going to take this cable out of this plastic down here. We're just going to slide it past it. We don't have to take this off. We can just slide it like that from behind it and pop it out. Then we'll pull it out from between the forks like this. Now we'll just unscrew this. Keep unscrewing it until it comes completely out. Like that. Okay, now we got the whole length of cable we can pull through. Like that. Now, as you can see, I've got the whole cable. Now, if you got you a new one and you want to put you a new one in, I'm going to show you what we need to do in order to put a new cable in. This is actually just going to be opposite of what we just did by taking it out. So there's a hole at the bottom down here. You want to put it back in the hole that you took it out of. You want to put your new cable in the hole that you took your old cable out of. And then you just want to screw this down. Just got to make sure it's straight. And then screw it down. Okay, that's far enough. And then we'll put our lock nut on it, like that. Okay, so we want our cable going back through the fork, like so. And then we're going to squeeze it down behind here like we did when we took it out. All right, now we got it routed the right way. Okay, now this is your throttle tube, and this is where you want your cable to go in at. There's a hole here and a slot for the cable to go in. So you want to bring your housing up to where it's going to be resting in here. You want to take your cable and pull it, turn your throttle until you get this lined up with the hole, drop it in the hole, and then drop that cable down in that path right there, just like that. Okay, then you can put your housing back together. Now this housing has a pin in it, and that pin has to line up with this hole. So you drop it, put it together like that, and you kind of move it back and forth until you feel it drop in. You may have to go in and out like this, back and forth, until you feel it drop in like that. And it just dropped in. And then you want to hold it together, come down underneath of it, and tighten your two screws up. Okay, there's one. The other one's right here. Okay. All right. So now we want to take our jam nut and just tighten it down so that this throttle cable won't move. It won't take much, just a little snug like that. Okay, now on this cable, this is the cable that goes into the carburetor. You want to pull your cable all the way out as far as you can. And then everything is in reverse order. This rubber piece, the small end goes on first. Slide it down. And then this goes on like this. And this is just going to slide down over that once we get it in position. And the spring. I want to slide this spring down and hold it, just like we did when we took it out. This is a little tricky, but you want to pull that cable out and hold that spring in. And then you want to go through the hole on the inside. So your slide's got a hole right there. And you want to go on the inside, take it in that hole, and bring this cable all the way up to the top, like that, to where it falls in, and then let it drop down into the hole. And then you can let go of your spring. Okay, now you're ready to install this into the carburetor. Now you need to look, this has a line all the way down. That's where the cable went in. The other side has a little notch. This is the side you want facing the idle adjustment. You want it to go in. If you're on the right side of the bike, you want this facing you. So you want this turned at a 90-degree angle from the front of the bike, just like this, because your screw's right there in line with that. So drop it in, and if it doesn't go all the way down, you have to turn it, because you want that to go all the way down. See, it's not going all the way down. So I'm going to pull it back up, and it got turned on me because of that spring. You got to kind of hold it so it doesn't turn on you, and then drop it in. Okay, see down in the carburetor how that's gone down all the way? It's not at the top. The slide is not at the top of the carburetor. It's slid all the way down. That's how you want it. It has to be all the way in like that. If that slide is still at the top of the carburetor, it will not idle. It'll be revving at a high rev when you go to start it. So you got to make sure that that slide's all the way down. And then you just line your cable up and then tighten the top. Now this doesn't have to be super tight. Just give it a little bit of snugging because you don't want any air leaks around this. So just snug it down like that. And then slide down your rubber boot over the top of the carb. Okay, now on this cable, you're going to have to drop the nut down, and you're going to have to put this cable in first. You're going to have to put the barrel right here in the hole down here first. So you put it in the hole, and then you line the cable up with the slot like that. See the slot in the hole? And then push it in, and then line it up with the track. Once you get that done, you can raise it up like this, slide it through that opening, and then drop it down in. You got to leave your nut on the bottom underneath of it like this. But slide this in like this, and then drop it in, and then you can start your nut on the other side. Get that started, then you can kind of get it to where you think you might have it, to where you want it, and then just set it. And then you take your carburetor, then you take your throttle, and just barely move your throttle. If that just starts to move, as soon as you move your throttle, you got it adjusted right. Once you get happy with the setting on that, go ahead and tighten your jam nut down. And you can hold this with a pair of pliers, and then just tighten your jam nut down good and snug so it doesn't move on you. Like that. Okay. Let's try the operation of it. Works perfectly. Okay, we're done with this side, so we'll go ahead and put our cover back on. We'll line this back up with this piece of plastic on here and drop it down over it. Like that. Pop it in the back. Pop it in the front. There we go. Okay, now it's time to put the gas tank on, whether you're installing a new tank or your old tank. Either way, you should have your sending unit in place and you should have your petcock in place. Now your sending unit, you want to plug this in first thing till it snaps. That's the way it looks when it's all the way in. Now this tank has a couple of U-shaped metal pieces. Those slide over these rubbers on both sides. So you have to line those up and slide those. And you want your cable to be on top. You don't want it to fall down underneath or get pinched. So kind of watch your cable whenever you're putting this tank in. So we'll take it. Okay, you take your tank and make sure your cable's not getting pinched or your wires or anything. Line it up. And then you slide it onto those rubbers. And then you lift up on it to make sure that it's on there, that it's good and secure. Okay, once you have your tank on there and it's slid on like it's supposed to be, there's a rubber piece on the back here. And this rubber piece has to go in underneath the tank. You have to line these holes up and line the holes in the frame up with that rubber piece. And then drop these down into the holes, on both holes. Okay, once you get your rubbers in, then you can put your bolts in. Start it by hand, make sure you got the threads lined up. And you can take your 10 millimeter and tighten it down. Okay, now you're at the petcock and you got to find your gas line. And you want to hook your gas line back up. Just slide it over as far as it'll go till it stops. Okay. And you take your needle nose and take your clamp, pinch it, and pull it back over where it's supposed to hold it on. Where it's good and secure, where it's clamped on tight. And you take your petcock and just turn it down or up wherever, however much gas you've got. If you've got a full tank, just turn it down. If you got tank is low, then you can turn it up for reserve. That's the way this goes. Straight down is for normal operating tank level. Straight up is if you're running reserve. Straight this way is off. Okay, then after you do that, you want to check for leaks. Make sure your gas line's not leaking after you turn it on. And you can remove your rag. And we take our plastic, line it up, snap it in. It's got 3 posts that you got to snap into place. Okay, now the seat has a lip in the front, a plastic lip, and it tucks in underneath this metal. So you got to put it underneath there first, and then line your hole up, and then your seat will just drop right down in there. You want to drop your bolt in it. And then put your nut and washer underneath back here. Now it's up to you whether you want to use that middle bolt, that 10 millimeter nut. I'm not using it. I don't think it's necessary, and it's just kind of hard to get to. So this one is plenty enough to hold it. And if this starts to turn on you, all you got to do is hold it with a pair of pliers. It won't take much if you don't have the right hex wrench. That's it. Okay, then after you get your throttle cable changed or your gas tank changed or whatever you had to do, you want to try it and make sure it's working normally. Like I said, if you go to start it up and it just all of a sudden RPMs go way high, then you don't have the slide in the proper position. It should start and idle just like it did there. So I hope that was helpful if you had to replace the throttle cable or even take the tank off. A lot of times there's a lot of things underneath the tank. It makes it a lot easier to get to if you take the tank off. So maybe you've never seen anybody take the tank off and you needed a little bit of video to show that. So anyway, I hope it was helpful. I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next one.